Hello, and welcome to the FI Entrepreneur, Financial Planning for the Risk Taker. This podcast will show you how to achieve FI through entrepreneurial pursuits by developing a well-calibrated and thought-out plan for risk management so that you can maximize the rewards.
Hosted by certified financial planner, enrolled agent, and serial entrepreneur Ben Martinek, this is the FI Entrepreneur, Financial Planning for the Risk Taker.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. None of the content is presented as investment advice. Consult your financial professional before acting on any of the information presented in this show.
All right, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm very excited to introduce to you our podcast guest for this interview today, a mentor and, dare I say, friend of mine, Anna Saucier. So, Anna, tell us your business. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background.
Well, Deb, you better say friend. Please, dare you. Thank you so much, both of you, for having me on the show. It's really a pleasure. I am a business coach, specifically for what I call people who passionately want to help other people. So health coaches, cycle charting coaches, parenting coaches, life coaches, a lot of individuals who get into business because they have a passion to do what they want to do. And they realize that they better make a little bit of money out of it in order to increase their capacity to do what they actually want to do. My business coaching is largely based on foundations, so internal and external foundations. It's foundational business concepts to say, let's lay out the roadmap of what you're doing. And then you can go out and grab tactics and strategies from all these different places and put them in. Whereas a lot of people get into business, especially online business, and they say, oh, I want to start a business. So I'm going to take this course and I'm going to do exactly how they say, and it's all going to work beautifully. But they don't have a strong foundation that they can put things in and out of because no course or any one path is going to work exactly for everyone. And then as an internal foundation, I focus on a lot of internal foundations of understanding that this is going to be the biggest growth process you've ever experienced in entrepreneurship. Internally, it's going to stretch you, and we need to understand how to deal with that when it happens. So that was a little bit of a longer introduction, but there you go.
No, I think that's fantastic, especially when you're in this mode of being an entrepreneur. There's a lot of stresses that can follow that. And so being able to lay that foundation internally and externally to be able to manage that well is super important, because before we hit record, we were talking about the entrepreneur often works 80 hours a week for himself rather than working 40 hours a week for somebody else. But with that comes a lot of stress, oftentimes, and anxiety about, well, I've got to be working all the time because I've got to get X, Y, or Z done. And so having been a recipient of a lot of your mentorship in that, I'm grateful for the guide that you have provided for me and our fellow mentees in your program, because that makes a big difference in your mental capacity to be able to take on the work that you're wanting to accomplish.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. I'm glad you brought that up. But the 80-hour work week, it's such an interesting conversation because it's almost become a badge of honor in entrepreneurship. Well, in corporate too. I mean, that's almost the American dream, is that the more I work, the more successful I'm going to be. And so that becomes a way of showing people that you know how to work hard and that you're really good at your craft. And if you're not doing that, it's almost saying, well, you're not really serious. And so we shy away from pulling back and resting and doing less because we have these narratives that tell us that that means I'm not as good. Like I'm not willing to go the distance and to push through and all those other sports coaching, phrases that we use. But I don't see that as serving most people. I think there are a few people out there who are like, they just have this constant energy, but most of us are not that way. And we need a lot more rejuvenative time and space. And that's where our true craft comes out of. It's not in the doing and spending more and more hours, because in that stress and in that doing, we become less creative and we put our being, our body mind, as I like to call it, into a place of nervous system dysregulation and stress response, which what does that do? It shuts off our creativity because we're in survival mode.
I actually often talk about that, like the flight or fight response, the need for survival, and how that has such an innate impact on your mentality, your mental health, your capacity to be able to get things accomplished. Because I get all of these things done, I have to, but then you aren't able to take that step back and have that creative space for maybe dreaming a bit. Ben, do you have any thoughts or feedback on that?
I do. Yeah. Well, I think the adage here of working smarter, not harder certainly comes into play. And just because you're putting in a lot of time doesn't mean you're being particularly smart about that time commitment. And could we be doing this in a better way? Or this actually makes me think back of our time when we drove truck together, where the common thought there is if you want to make as much money as possible, you got to drive as many miles and put as much down. But the faster you drive, the more stressful the job becomes and the less efficient the truck operates. And you actually, despite working more, don't make more money. You make less money. And so to think of this in somewhat of an analytical perspective, it's about points of efficiency, and working too much actually decreases your efficiency rather than improves upon it. And I think that's what you're getting at. You can actually work better, work creatively, and have it be less demanding. And you're overworking. You're not actually helping yourself in this situation. The funny thing in the truck driving business is if you just slowed down, you'd make more money, which is so counterintuitive. But I think takeaway that would be similar to what you just said here is, hey, if you actually stopped working less hours, you'd make more money, which again is like, what? Really? Is that true? But is that how you would see or understand that?
I do. And when you say things like that, and I have this quote I'm going to share with you, I can feel part of my body still like, really, really, really. But one of my past coaches said, the slower I go, the faster I grow.
Mm.
And you're like, come on. This is where these narratives are so deep in us. But I believe, and I've experienced this for myself, especially in entrepreneurship, you're having to learn so many things. You're learning about yourself. You're learning how to communicate with people, how to communicate in a more, not really diplomatic, like trauma aware, give and take, crucial conversations kind of way. You're learning tech. You're learning different marketing techniques. You're learning how to make a P&L, and true learning happens in the rest, because that's the place where it integrates. Like I can constantly go out and do a new thing all the time. Or like in school, what we did is we were taught something and we held on to it long enough to take the test and to regurgitate the information. But was it truly integrated into myself? And that's where in entrepreneurship, anything we do new, the combination of learning how to be more comfortable in a space of discomfort. Because when you're constantly having to learn new things, you're also in a constant space of discomfort, whereas like very little, you're like, okay, I'm the boss. Everything's good. There's nothing to complain about. There's nothing to improve. Everything's awesome. Very rarely do we have this experience, but it's almost this cultural thing that we've been taught that that's what it should feel like. If I'm doing the right things, I should feel good all the time. But I don't believe that, because then we're like settled into this place of, where we're not growing. Entrepreneurship asks us a whole lot more. It demands a whole lot more of that getting comfortable in the discomfort. And in order to fully integrate that and really grow in a true resilience, we have to create the space and the time for integration. And that's where I think it actually can be very true that the more space I create, and like I go and I do the thing, I pull back and I integrate, and then it's like twice as hard. Am I able to go the next time?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I was just listening to a talk given in which folks who are given or dedicated to their careers, the kind of the height of success there is achievements and kind of your trophy rack. What can you throw up for all the things that you've accomplished? But what's being proposed in the talk, as good as that is, and you need to have some achievement in all of this. You're not going to have much of a business if you're not achieving anything, for sure. But, kind of the next stage is really everything that you were just echoing. He attempted to actually coin a new term. Instead of achievement, we need receivement, this ability to take a step back and rest and to receive, to make ourselves available for new ideas, new information, new insight, new thoughts. And like that was the breakthrough movement. And if all our life was just nothing but achievements, he was suggesting it turns hollow, empty. We keep looking for the next thing. And so there needs to be this opportunity instead, as you were highlighting, this integration, this opportunity to step back, to rest. But you don't hear that in entrepreneurship. And it's really perfect for the show. We're talking about financial independence. Really, the ideal of financial independence is achieving rest. It's achieving some breathing room. It's achieving the ability to, just be able to have life on your own terms, if you will. So have you seen that so far in your pursuits of entrepreneurship?
The growth in the rest.
Yeah. I mean, you're seeming to suggest, Anna, that like the height of entrepreneurship, like where things are really good, is actually resting. But you're not doing that just because it'd be fun to take a break from work. I think a lot of people are just burnt out and they need the rest because they push any harder. They're going to be laid to nothing.
Right.
I mean, you're just seeing that as like part of me to be an entrepreneur, to be actually good at this. I need to rest regardless. I'm trying to integrate or bring home the thought of this financial independence. That's a big theme in our show. Do you see maybe rest and financial independence as one of the same? Or are they different? I mean, how would you understand maybe financial independence would be my better question.
Yeah. It's interesting. My brain is thinking of so many things at the same time. One of them is, I think one of the erroneous patterns that we can find ourselves in as entrepreneurs is that we're going to get to some achievement and feel that financial independence. Independence of various kinds. Like financial independence to me means it feels free. It feels like freedom. And that's the same with time independence and energy independence. But we don't get to work our butts off to get to a place and then it appears, right? I don't believe that. I think we need to say, this is what I want this to look and feel like. How can I live that right now? Even if it's a tiny piece of it. And sometimes, I didn't even ask you guys before we record about like how you feel about debt. I come across this a lot. People are like, I have to get out of debt at all costs. To me, that's another word for support also. We say like, I'm going to push this through myself and then I'm going to get supported. So I think a lot of times we need to say, even if it stretches me a little bit and feels uncomfortable, I'm going to get some support so that I can start feeling like this now. Like, yeah, we need to make an investment in some childcare or some coaching or some kind of training to say, I need the support so that I have some space, some more space and some more rest so that I can rise up into this place. We have to like take it and claim it almost instead of it being some kind of reward. And so that's where I think financial independence and the rest and the space come together. And it's not a reward for hustling yourself so hard. It's actually something like, how can we claim this in our lives now?
And I'm quite inspired by what you've been offering. So this leads me to ask the question to know a bit more about your background. Obviously, over the last many years, as I've been under your mentorship and your business leadership, I've witnessed your growth in this area. But I want to know a bit more about your background, like where you're from and what influences were present in your upbringing that maybe helped you have more of a bend toward entrepreneurial pursuits.
Yeah, of course. I was thinking about this question because you had sent it over earlier and realizing my parents weren't entrepreneurs. Like, not really any of my family were entrepreneurs. I was born in Los Angeles, California, but grew up mostly in central Arizona. And my parents, they worked largely with a ranch for, I'm not sure what the right word these days is to use. Like we would call it mentally handicapped or mentally disabled, full range spectrum of disabled adults. And this is a little bit entrepreneurial, I guess. The whole concept of the ranch was that every person had a job and they contributed to it. And so they weren't there just to hang out in their lives, but they had some gift to bring to the community. And they were able to start, maybe one guy would start teaching a craft class to the others, or the other one, his job would be to clean the pool or something. And so it just encouraged every individual to bring something into the community. And so that was an environment I largely grew up in there. And then my dad started working as a manager at different hotels. And so after college and earning a degree in philosophy and theology, which I've never directly used in any way from Franciscan University, it gave me a lot. But then I think I was reflecting on this and realizing that every quote unquote real job that I had after college, I brought some entrepreneurial aspects into it because I'd worked with my dad in the hotel capacity. My first job was working at a hotel in Southern California because after college in Ohio, my friend and I said, what do we want to do? We want to live at the beach. So let's move to Southern California and figure out how to survive. So I worked at a hotel there. I would naturally find myself, okay, why are we doing this process? Because it's not very efficient. Like, can we move this over here and just tighten up the process a little bit? And so I found myself doing that there. And then I ended up training as an IT consultant. And so learning a lot of tech and under a mentorship of another guy who was an entrepreneur and ran his own business. And I was his first employee. And so I kind of came in learning from him and seeing all of the inefficiencies that were happening in that small business because he was doing his craft and he was ignoring everything else. So I ended up kind of overhauling everything for him And then when I followed a guy up to Alaska, which is a whole other story, I then got tired of IT and moved and ended up getting hired as an office manager for a commercial real estate finance broker. And same thing, like I hired as the office manager, but this was the big one, really. I very quickly realized that there was a whole lot more efficiency and process and really foundations that could be entered in there because he was a sales guy. He was a broker. So he'd go out and he'd make deals. And this is commercial real estate. So these are malls and high-rise buildings. So he'd go out and make deals and then he'd come back to the office and try to like coordinate the calls with lawyers, move papers around and all that stuff. Finally, I said, wait a second, this is messed up. It doesn't make any sense for you to be doing these things. And so I basically made a new position for myself. And within 6 months was managing all of these multi-$10 million closings and then expanded to helping other brokers in the main LA office to manage their closings for these huge deals as well. So that's kind of where I got this passion for, hey, let's make this a whole lot better of an experience by looking at the foundations and creating some systems and processes and cleaning this up a little bit.
That's great. So I love hearing about your history because I think it's very fun, kind of exotic. Well, we're just going to go to the beach and figure out how to live. But, kind of establishing that desire for a lifestyle. And then what steps can you take to inform that and make that happen? So knowing that is your background, how then did you take those first steps into getting into your mentorship business coaching where you are now? And I know that there's many steps along the way, but what was that first step forward that you took to say, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to explore this as an option?
Yeah, it really came out of some pain, if I'm being honest. We went through 7 years of infertility, and a large portion of that I was working for this huge company and making a lot of money, but I was also helping other people make a lot of money, but it wasn't like coming out of my heart. It wasn't a sole purpose kind of work. And through doing that and the struggle with infertility, it started to be really uncomfortable. And I want to do something more with my life. And so I explored different avenues. So we did get pregnant with 1 and then 2 children. But before we first conceived, after struggling with infertility, I really started to have that passion about just that, helping other women to avoid that struggle of infertility, and became a cycle charting instructor. And I wanted to expand that. I wanted to do more to spread this knowledge and this awareness that that's a possibility, that we can actually learn more about our bodies and take that information and knowledge and learn to overcome these health obstacles. But when I found myself with 2 young, so a 2-year-old and a newborn, I wasn't able to make that kind of impact. And it started to feel like, oh, I want to do more and I want to go bigger. And that's really the point at which I made the transition into, well, if I can help other people expand their reach, then that's like another level of what I'm able to do. And so that's when I moved into first focusing on cycle charting instructors, fertility awareness instructors, and helping them build businesses. And then it just naturally expanded over the last 4 years into whether health coaches and parenting coaches and others.
And were you still working full time whenever you decided to make this leap? Or did you kind of take some time off from working once you had your children?
I pulled back on work a lot. I mean, the commercial real estate finance work really took a nosedive in 2008, right? So at least for a while. And so at that point, I actually started learning how to write code and build software from my husband. And so that was a side thing. So I had all these different side things that were happening while I was still searching for that passion and having children and nursing children. So I did have really the luxury and the privilege of having that space because my husband was able to support us. And that was a real gift, and being able to just explore what I really wanted to do.
So Anna, so far in our conversation, there's been 2 things that have really stood out to me, and I just love both of them. One had to do with it. You made mention that in your experience with working with other entrepreneurs as part of your relationship or engagement with them, many of them do so out of a passion to make the world a better place. It's not necessarily driven by how to make money out of this. In fact, that's one of the reasons why they do consulting work with you, is actually to figure out how can we make money out of this, because maybe that's an issue. So I just think that's a bit of an oddity. A lot of folks presume that out of the gate, business is all about making money. And to stay in business, there's no question like that has to be a primary concern, because if you're not profitable, you will eventually no longer be in business. At some point, there seems like there's a morphing. As the bigger a business gets, the more it just reduces its goal or its aim, right? At least has the danger of reducing its goal and its aim. to just making money. I'm kind of curious in your experience with entrepreneurship, how you understand or help facilitate these focuses first on facilitating this passion and helping to make the passion be a profitable enterprise. I'd like just for you to talk about that a little bit, and then I've got some question on your understanding of financial independence. But do you have any thoughts to share about this seeming disconnect between where most businesses are only about making money, and that needs to be an important goal, but the entrepreneur didn't get into business because of money. Like that wasn't what got him going.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we get out of that, I think they find so quickly that things just stall out so fast. And that's where often the pattern that I see happen is they have this passion and this drive and they say, oh, I could do this as a thing. I could do this as a money-making enterprise and support my family and all these good things. But a couple things happen. One, we all have stuff around money and we don't know what that stuff is necessarily because it's so far built into who we are. And so when we start trading, like it's almost my soul. I hate to say that, like we're not selling our soul, but we're allowing our soul and this gift that we've been created to give to the world, offer to other people in exchange for money. And so when we do that, all the money stuff comes up because now it's personal. Now it's very, very personal. And the other thing that happens is I briefly mentioned before, we say, okay, I don't know how to do this, so I need somebody to tell me how to do this. And so they go take a course and they're taught, like, here's the steps you need to do to make the business happen. But that's not necessarily integrated with, this is my soul fit thing I want to give. And then, okay, but I have to do these things and I have to do them exactly how I'm told to do them because that's what I learned in school. It's like when I do all the right things, everything works out and I get the A. What we're not, there's just so many pieces missing there in understanding how deeply important the personal growth is, developing the resilience, developing the way of looking at, well, that didn't work and that didn't work and that didn't work. Oh, that worked. Okay, great. So let's look at these other things and let's tweak them and let's learn from them. And without all of the stories of something didn't work, I did it wrong, this is not working, I'm bad. And we have these mindset things come up that we just aren't often taught how to process through all of that.
Sure. So do you feel like that's probably one of the biggest challenges? I mean, that's been an area of focus for Deb and I for sure over the last few years as our businesses have taken off and become more successful and we're seeing traction and I have team members. I mean, there's just a lot of good things that are happening, but the unexpected thing is actually how much of my focus in this turns to mindset and adjusting my frame of mind. And this has been brought up on a prior podcast, but I just want to bring it up again because there's a book out there called Your Money and Your Brain by Jason Zweig, a Wall Street Journal editor, journalist. Great piece. And he has a common theme in all this that, you won't get money right until you get your brain right, until you get your mindset right, because wealth creation, managing wealth is fundamentally a mindset arrangement. I'm just curious, it seems like everything that you're saying is echoing that. Is that what you have found to be true in your own experience as well?
Yeah, it is. And mindset, there's lots of different pathways, even in just, we could get into mindset and be like, okay, what do you mean by mindset? Because we have like the toxic positivity pathway where it just drown out all the negativity with all good thoughts, right? And I have a book, Toxic Positivity, right here with Whitney Goodman, which is a great thing to read. But to me, it's a lot of self-awareness with the mindset work. That's the key thing, is the self-awareness. It's the self-compassion. It's recognizing the value first. The first part of mindset work is asking the question, what is my mindset? Like, where's my brain focusing? Is it focusing on, I'll be happy when I get to this amount? Is it focusing on, I've screwed up everything in the past, what makes me think I'm going to do this one right? Where is my mind set? Then immediately we bring in so much self-compassion and say, well, it's so fantastic. First of all, let's celebrate the fact that we can think about our thoughts. And then I'm able to recognize, oh, okay, my brain is focused over there. Of course. And then I'm judging those thoughts. And then this downhill spiral because it's judgment upon judgment. And then we layer shame on top of it and everything falls apart. So absolutely, I agree. I think it is important to point out there's different avenues when we talk about mindset. And when I do it, it's a lot of self-compassion. It's recognizing thoughts, recognizing emotions, and bringing self-compassion into those and being like, oh yeah, okay, I'm thinking that, I'm feeling that. And can I handle it? Like, can I still take a step forward without fixing myself? A thought doesn't need to be fixed. I don't need to be fixed. It's there. And what else can we do at the same time?
So good. I really love everything you're saying there, Anna. I do have one more question, but Deb, do you have any thoughts or ideas that are coming to mind for you?
I just want to comment on this, your awareness of where your mind is, because I think you can get so stuck in the doing. I know we talked about that earlier, and it calls to mind, there's a mentor that we have here in the local area that he often says, when you grow up, especially in like a German Russian household, as many of the people who settled around here in North Dakota are, they're German Russian, like it's, don't just sit there, do something, but sometimes you have to not do something and just sit there. Be able to sit and rest and be aware instead of just always being go, 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 because it's that achievement versus receivement. And back to your comment there too, Anna, we want to be integrated, and we can't be integrated if we're just always doing. We have to allow ourselves to just be at the same time. And so I just want to echo those sentiments because they're so powerful and really good for us to consider in our entrepreneurial pursuits, because so much of it can be the doing, because we've got to hit X, Y, or Z. And then, just as you said, like these are the parameters, and then I can feel at rest. But no, we've got to be able to rest now and be now.
Yeah.
Well, I just think everything you had to say there, Deb, ties in perfectly to what I wanted to re-echo Anna had gotten to about FI. And
great minds. This is great. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we work with quite a few folks. Part of our work is in helping people obtain FIRE, as they call it, financial independence, retire early. And I mean, it's also retirement planning, but it's geared towards usually hitting some sort of goal, like quantified goal, a certain amount of money, or you can facilitate a certain lifestyle, or I can live independently wealthy, maybe is another way to describe it. Live indefinitely on the resources I've gathered for myself, the savings. And it's like, I'm going to work all the way to this point. And then I'm there, I'm done, and I can cut it off. And what's interesting for the folks who have been pursuing FI, in my experience, what I've been hearing from other financial advisors, just people prowling the space, is you're actually so driven a lot of times to get to that goal that you finally get there and you can't turn it off. You've been pushing so hard, especially a lot of times this is about aggressive accelerating to this end. But when you finally achieve it, it's like you're still not able to actually enjoy the wealth. You don't know if it's quite enough. It's like, well, I need to work a little bit more, need to put some more hours in. Maybe I can delay things a little more. It's not quite there. And it's just everything that you've said, Anna, and what you were getting at too, Deb, is like bringing financial independence into the present right now in this moment. And it's not about quantifiable goals, not about how much money you're saving or hitting this metric. And I do think those are important. Like that's part of what we do in our business. But like that actually isn't financial independence, is what you're seeming to suggest. Like if you're not living financial independence now, you're not living it. You're never going to live it. Is that right? Is that how you feel about it?
Yeah, gosh, I think I'd have to think about that for 15 minutes, but I think I just let that sink in because I don't think about that, just the concept of the phrase of financial independence a lot. But I do think that, yes, I tend to tell people with my clients and in my group program that, yes, set the number goal, but there's two important things. Like that ought not be the focus of everything that I'm doing. Because if the money is the focus, money is neutral, like in concept. As a thing, it's neither good nor bad. It's a tool. It's a neutral thing. And so if we're looking at a neutral thing as my goal, it just is not going to bring up the drive that I need, especially if you haven't been trained to be a money-driven person, right? To love that, have the love of money. And a lot of my people come from the opposite. They were trained to like, money is the root of all evil. And so we're going to come away from that as well and see it as this great neutral tool. And so what I focus on with my people is, what does the money make possible? Then we get into, like you're talking about, Ben, that's the lifestyle. That's the time freedom and the energy freedom and the resource freedom and the privilege of opportunities. And those things, then we can say, okay, how would that feel to you? Like that feels free. It feels more relaxed. It feels peaceful. It feels calm. Okay, so without any circumstances changing right now, how can we create more peace, calm, freedom in your life right now? So we start living that independence, but also what we're looking at, like I mentioned, not focusing on the money as the goal, but what it makes possible and refocusing on the purpose of the work that I want to do in the first place. This is why I started this thing. And so, yeah, we make the transaction because that keeps my business going. And some people are different in that ways too. Like I find I've worked with my coach to really realize that I have to consciously separate the financial stuff from me coaching with my clients. And I even have an affirmation that I use sometimes. my financial stability has nothing to do with my clients. And I almost like wire that in because my work with my clients really has nothing to do directly with the money. That's the cultural exchange. So those are just other things. I don't know if I'm directly answering the question, but the other things that have come up in this conversation.
No, but I think everything, I wasn't expecting this, Anna, when we had you scheduled for this call, but this focus on reimagining FI and making it happen today and not waiting for it to be something that we cross this threshold barrier once certain things happen. Because it has the danger of just being the rat race still. You're trying to achieve that barrier as a way to get out of the rat race, and yet it's still its own rat race.
Yeah.
You're not sure if you can get out of it even once you've achieved what you thought it needed to be.
Yeah, it just personally, we've had some of these conversations. Just as I mentioned, my husband is in the process of going back to grad school. And so my business is growing to support the entire family. And that is a season of, we've had to have these conversations of, this is not the time that we're building our savings. We can't do everything all at once. We can't send you back to school and go to grad school and me building my business and living on ramen and all these things. So this is not the time to build the savings and to pay off all the debt, right?
Right.
So in this season, financial independence we've had these conversations around how can we help every person in the family thrive and really experience thriving right now, because we're growing and we're changing roles and there's so much happening already. And if that means, Anna gets on a meal plan where her food's delivered, or we increase the housekeeping to weekly instead of twice a month. Instead of putting money into savings right now, we put it over here so that we have the space to grow. Yeah. So I think that's also financial independence. It's not like every single moment we're looking at saving for retirement. I want to live now.
Right. I think the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is it allowing that, because you start this entrepreneur activity, or at least one of the takeaways or hopes that you would have from this is the ability for it to continue. It's not, FI can be so driven, especially if you're coming from it out of this corporate world or mindset or some other job arrangement where you're trying to get out from under that so you can finally start living. And FI is giving yourself the permission to finally do that thing, do your initiative, maybe start your business. But, if you just start your business, it's I didn't start this and go through all the work to get this going and make it profitable to then walk away from it. I mean, I've got my business now and that's going to continue on really for as long as I can continue it. I don't intend to ever bring it to an end, right? I mean, I didn't start this with an end goal in mind. It's going to go with me for the rest of my life if I can, right? I mean, is that your experience in pursuing this? Do you have a desire to end your business pursuit at some point, to cut ties with it?
Oh, I'm sure it would just morph into something else. I mean, I can't imagine. I would spend 4 days a week just reading, but I think I'd probably have to still do something else with the knowledge and the creativity that I assimilate. But that reminds me, as you asked that, Ben, I think the need for support really never ends. If you're growing a business, for me, if one of your focus is on not hustling and not doing the 80-hour work weeks, then we constantly have to be thinking about, okay, what are the things in my business that actually bring me energy? They actually feed me and they help me to thrive. And there's going to be other things that just suck it completely away. And so how can we constantly not be doing those things? We bring on another person, a few other people to do these things. That doesn't mean that if you don't want to grow into this massive corporation, then don't. If you just want to be the one coaching and serving the people that you serve, great. But there's probably 5 other roles that can be done by someone else. I mean, this is my vision. All I want to be doing is coaching and writing and speaking in those things, everything else. So the operations and things can be done by someone else.
Right. And I think everything you echo there sounds like the heart and soul of every entrepreneur I've ever met. I mean, it's certainly true of my own aspirations and ambitions. So it's just great to hear your fresh perspective on it, though, Anna, and everything you've had to offer. So, Deb, I'd like to kick it back over to you and see how you'd like to close things out, or if you've got any final thoughts on the matters that have been shared today.
Sure. I suppose one last question. And again, knowing my own personal experience being a mentee under your leadership over the last several years, Anna, is there anything that you would change about your journey? Or if there's anything that you could change about your journey, what would that be?
I would get the foundations sooner. And it was so much trial and error of jumping around, and particularly in the internal space. And all of the energy drained of beating up on ourselves when things fail and mistakes made and going this direction, then that direction, and then the other direction and making ourselves wrong for that rather than how can I make myself right for all of this because I'm growing? And so I think it's a lot of unlearning. And then I would love to have had the internal and external foundations much sooner in my journey.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Anna, for everything you've shared today and coming on the show. It's just been beautiful. Really, I think that's the term that comes to mind for you sharing your thoughts you're having. I think it's given hopefully new insight for everyone who's listened about FI and financial independence and how entrepreneurship can facilitate that. And some of this at times, I'm a financial advisor, planner. It's analytical. It is about your numbers. It's looking at your cash flows. It's trying to figure out what your savings rate should be, or even just making hard changes or improvements within your business. But so much about the mindset that we've talked about today and just adjusting and living it now instead of waiting for it to come in the future. I think it's just right. It's like it is what it needs to happen because entrepreneurship is great, but it's also tough and challenging and has its ups and downs and can't make it also be FI today, financial independence today. Then what are we doing all this for, right?
Yeah, it really has been a beautiful conversation. You took that word. It is the perfect word. Thank you so much for allowing me to share all of this and just having this conversation together.
Thank you, Anna.
Our pleasure, Anna. We'll have to have you back.
Sounds great.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've had as much fun as we did. If you'd like to learn more about any of the subjects we spoke about, please visit our website for show notes, links, and more. Hit like, subscribe, or whatever button you've got in front of you to show some love. Remember, the information presented in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Remember what Teddy Roosevelt said about the person who strives greatly. If he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Until next time, keep striving.
Thanks again, and be well.